Welcome to the Blessors of Israel podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. Today I am so honored to be in studio, remote though, with Pastor Matthew Finch, the Director of Calvary Chapel Bible College in Jerusalem. Pastor Matthew, it is an honor to be with you today. You know, this last March, I had the privilege of sitting down with you, having a cup of coffee in Jerusalem at the Bible College there, learning about your vision and mission. And I just thought it would be so edifying for those who partner with Blessors of Israel to hear about your walk with the Lord, your ministry there in Jerusalem, and so that they can understand just what is it like, life in Israel. What is it like day to day? We hear about it. We see all these news reports, especially after October 7th of 2023. We just want to learn more about what life is like. And then from an evangelical perspective, how can we be supporting Israel? So that's kind of where I want to go with all of this. But I think the first thing I wanted to ask you is, how did the Lord guide you to become the director of Calvary Chapel Bible College in Jerusalem? Big open-ended question there.
Yeah, well, we don't have 3 hours, so I'll try to consolidate it. But we're from my wife and I and our kids were originally from California, and we were praying about where the Lord would have us go and serve. Felt like California wasn't the place, and where would it be? Inevitably, through prayer, the Lord led us to come to Israel. Through the process of what's called Aliyah, which is, Jews from around the world can come and make a home here. And so my wife, Elizabeth, who is part biologically Jewish, fit right in to the law return. So we came here, and to be honest, Matthew, we didn't know what we were going to do. I didn't actually come from Bible college. We came in faith, just kind of in obedience, hearing from the Lord and being led by Him. And the first week that we were here, we landed in Nazareth. We came into Israel, had never been here before, didn't know a single person. We had 3 little kids, 11, 9, and 8, and everything that we owned was in our bags. And it was kind of like that huge step of faith. Had no idea where to go. So I was like, let's go check out Nazareth. And so we ended up going to Nazareth and spending, I think, maybe about a week there. And there was a guy that I had heard, another Calvary Chapel pastor who was living in the land, never met him. And so I kind of contacted somebody in the States saying, I think there's a Calvary Chapel pastor. Can you get me in touch with him? So inevitably, we had kind of like, a video chat sort of thing. And he told me what he does. And, we're kind of thumbing around and like, well, where should we stay? And, how much does rent cost? And he said something like, well, you can stay at my house church. We don't have anybody living there for the next couple of months, and it can kind of get you guys on your feet. And so we're in Nazareth, and we have this plan to go to his house. And great pastor, great guy. I was having like this huge spiritual warfare attack on my mind, and I was just breaking down in front of my wife, saying like, Lord, maybe I made a mistake. I thought the Lord was leading us, and now we're here. What do we do? And right when I'm having this conversation, Pastor calls me on the phone, and the words are still coming out of my mouth, and he says, Matt, I want you to come and teach at my church, and that's just what it's going to be. And so he hangs up the phone, and I was like, what just happened? I mean, this he doesn't even know me, and he wants me to teach at his church. So I was honored to, of course, and so I did. We went to stay with him. I taught a Bible study, and I think it was John chapter 6. That He's the bread of life and that sort of thing. And immediately after, he came up to me and he said, "I want you to come on as my assistant pastor, and I want you to pray about taking over the Bible college." And so it was just one of those things that the Lord caused us to come in faith, not knowing, kind of like Abraham, the land that we've never been to before, and just kind of like dumps all of this in our lap. And so it really was amazing.
That is a beautiful story. How the Lord is a lamp unto our feet, and how He just guided you step by step. Yes. You didn't know what the end was going to be, and all of a sudden you discovered as you just continue to take that step of faith. What a beautiful, beautiful picture. Now, what is the vision and mission for Calvary Chapel Bible College in Jerusalem?
Yeah, I mean, we are a Bible college, and so we care about the academics. But if I was being honest with you, Matthew, the academics probably take a lower tier. I think more than anything, it just comes down to discipleship. We teach the word. Obviously, we're Calvary Chapel, verse by verse. But for us, I think that it's more than just getting up into the pulpit and teaching and then disappearing later. I think that real discipleship for us is having a closeness with the students, meaning that I'm going to be there every day. I'm going to take them out to lunch individually, one by one. We're going to travel together. We're going to eat together. Just kind of, doing life in a close way. And in that sense, when I get up into the pulpit and I preach God's word, which is powerful to change lives, they already have an open heart. And so really at the end of the day, I would rather them get a C minus and leave changed into the image of Christ rather than get the A plus and because they were able to cross the T's and dot the I's. So I would just say biblical discipleship.
So are the students from Israel? Are they from the United States? Are they from Europe? Where do you see the students primarily coming from? What are their ages typically?
So typically their ages are anywhere between 18 and 25. Really,
so
college.
Recent graduates from high school or college?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of them are right out of high school, and some of them are guys and girls who have graduated already and just kind of want to do one more semester in Israel. And you don't blame them. I mean, how many people, come to Israel for 3 months? Some people save their whole life, to come for 12 days. So it's highly advantageous. Most of them are within the CCBC family, I would say.
Meaning the Calvary Chapel Bible College family?
Yes, that's right. So America, Europe, parts of Asia, South America, a lot of Americans, not really a lot of Israelis.
So do you have a lot of tours of Israel then? So you take them, not only the class work in Jerusalem in the classroom setting, but also you take them out and they tour and they get a chance to experience Israel through your leadership?
That's exactly it. I mean, why would you come to Israel to study and be locked into a classroom, right? So we have what's called a study tour class where we, drive out to whatever biblical location, teach on site, kind of understand, the area, the topography, the things that you smell in the air. And I think all of that is highly advantageous, I think, to study the Bible. And I think Chuck has always said it. It's just so important to do. And so I think that's a lot of ways, a lot of reasons why young people come is to experience the whole Israel thing.
Boy, if I was a young man again, that's exactly what I would do. I always tell my wife, if I could do it all over again, I would spend as much time in Israel as I possibly could. It sounds so wonderful. In fact, I was talking with somebody just the other day, part of our church, and she told me she's never been outside the country, but her first trip, she's going to be turning 71, is she wants to go to Israel, and she would love to spend a month there just to grow and learn and not feel rushed. And boy, I wholeheartedly support that vision. As an evangelical Christian in Israel, what are some of the difficulties that you or your family have encountered while living in Israel? And you've been there for how many years now?
We've been here for 10 years. As a matter of fact, 10 years this month. We moved here in 2015. So here's some of the struggles. Christianity is less than 1% of the population here in Israel. That includes traditional, denominations like Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, and that sort of thing. So evangelicalism is a fraction of even that. So we're most certainly in the minority. It's hard to find fellowship sometimes. Church services in which we're like-minded. And there are great guys here. I wouldn't say that I think that we agree in the fundamentals, but the Calvary Chapel family is very small here. So to have somebody that would come alongside of us that would kind of think in the same sort of theological way is very hard and very few, and there's just very few here. So I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is just being the minority. When the Jewish community, when the Israelis hear that you're a Christian, then they automatically think Catholic, and you kind of have to explain, well, no, we don't believe exactly like that. We didn't believe in the Crusades. We love you guys, and so there's a lot of explaining as far as like what we believe and why we believe it. A lot of them believe that we're kind of in a cult, and you have to explain like, well, no, this isn't just a cult. This is a worldwide, religion. It's very important, has a lot of legitimacy. And so I think that there are challenges there as well. And I think in any country, when you are the minority and people don't understand, I think that you can end up being the odd man out. And so I think it was hard for our family, especially our kids, to find friends that were good kids and believers and have fellowship and that sort of thing. So I would say that's on the top of the list.
So when October 7th, 2023 happened, Hamas terrorists attack Israel. You have, about 1,200 people that were murdered, 251 people taken hostage. I mean, just the terrible atrocities. Here on Blessors of Israel podcast on our website, we've talked about it over and over again because it was such a pivotal event. But for you to have lived there through that and then see how Israel has, to a degree, recuperated since then or adjusted since then, what are your thoughts? Because I know I have my perspective visiting there for a short time, for a couple of weeks back in March. But for you, you've lived through the whole thing. How did that impact you, your family, your ministry, and even your view of Israel? You see what's posted online, but then you see a different reality, I'm sure, there in the streets of Jerusalem.
I mean, I think I would say, Matthew, that was the day that everything changed. We've had wars before. We've had, 4 or 5 intifadas and, the Lebanese war. But I think the trajectory of where Israel was, I don't think that we'll ever go back to that. I think the world has changed because of October 7th. I think it was shocking at first. I woke up. I was actually speaking to my next teacher who was supposed to fly out. And I just kept thinking, what is that noise? I hear bombing and somebody doing construction at this early in the morning. Come to find out, Hamas was sending over rockets, which wasn't something new to us. But what was new was that Hamas infiltrated into Israel. And that was kind of like something that, at least in my sphere of influence, I think it was something almost hard to grasp. We were all in denial, watching these videos on Facebook, Hamas coming in and some kids speaking Hebrew, and we're thinking there's no way. I mean, that's AI. It's got to be a fake. But then realizing slowly over a couple of days, not just what had happened, but the magnitude of the damage which was done, and on our soil. And so I think it was shocking. And then, of course, immediately going into the hostage situation and what it must be like being a hostage in Gaza and just not knowing whenever you're going to get out, and being treated in a certain way, and being terrified, not knowing if you're ever going to see your family again, and those thoughts just kind of dictating really all of society. Everywhere you went, you saw the pictures of the hostages. I would say within that year, we're moving into 2024. I think there was a deep brokenness for the first time ever, as we were bringing in these groups and kind of traveling the land and, speaking to Israelis. I don't think that I've ever seen more of a tender-heartedness coming with the brokenness. And it's not that we want to, take advantage of, what happened, But there's a sense where, God uses all things, right, for the good of those who love him and called according to his purpose. And there's a sense that, even in this horrible, terrible act, that I think that you can see that their hearts were open to want to talk with us, to pray. There was a few times where, a grown man would start, getting teary-eyed, saying things like, what are you doing here right now? And to have the opportunity to say, like, well, we're here because we love you and we want to support you. I think it was a big deal. The wars fluctuated. We had Hamas, we had, Hezbollah in the north, we had the Houthis, and then, of course, Iran itself sending over rockets. So it kind of, comes in waves and comes and goes. I think there's a sense where Israelis are very resilient. And so nobody can live under that sort of mentality of always, bombs are coming in. So I think in a lot of ways, Israelis have settled with, well, this is life.
I saw that when I was there. I'll never forget. It was the first time the sirens went off. I literally they'd broken that ceasefire, had come to an end, and it's about 4:00 in the morning, and I'm woken up by the alarms going off. I'm thinking, that's not the typical horns I hear going off. Is that what I think it is?
Yes.
I see people shuffling down to the bomb shelter at the bottom of the hotel I'm staying in, and there it was like business as usual. They're looking at their cell phones, wondering how long before the all clear is given. And then 2 days later, I was in Jerusalem. So I was in Tel Aviv the first time, and there wasn't enough room in this hotel for all of us there. So we're just sitting in the stairwells and whatnot. And I'll never forget this old Jewish man, because all these children are in there, and he begins to start singing a song. And everyone in the stairwell, they begin to sing, the children. And it was kind of this distraction for the kids, but also I felt like a coalescing of the community. It's like we are, like you talked about resilience, we are going to get through this. This is not going to define or change us. And I thought, wow, these are strong, strong people. Here they've been dealing with this for, at that point, a year and a half. Right. And you could see, it was difficult. I know the next day the streets were quieter. People aren't going to work as much after one of those goes off. The alarms go off in the middle of the night. But nevertheless, they're not going to let it change who they are. I agree with you. I saw that perspective when I was there, just for the short time that I was there.
Yeah. I mean, if you would go out of my neighborhood and go into the city, what you would see right now is just business as usual. People with their families, people going to work, trying to enjoy the beach and that sort of thing. And so I think that you can't just perpetually live in fear. I think you have to make that choice of, we're going to live life. And come what may, we're not going to let
Even with Iran, I mean, that was quite a tense time, those 12 days with Iran. How was that? I mean, because they were throwing everything but the kitchen sink that they had at that point at you.
Yeah. Well, look, and so I was actually out of the country when Iran started. Yes, but my kids were all in the country. And so it's more of like secondhand information, talking to friends and finding out what's going on, if everybody's okay. The bombs with Iran were much more destructive. We had many more missiles that actually landed and took lives. So I do think that for the 12 days, there was much more of an urgency. But still, I'm calling my boys. I'm like, hey, my alarm's going off in California. I'm getting alerts for our neighborhood. Are you guys in a bomb shelter? And they're just like, do we have to do that, Dad? Yes, go to the bomb shelter. So I still think that even with that, and I was speaking to a young lady at the store, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I missed all the action. I wish I could have been here I love being with the people in the hard time. And she's like, we just had fun with it. I took the kids to the bomb shelter. We had kind of like a sleepover, ate popcorn and just made the best of it. So I think there are times where it's much more of an urgency, but I still see them as just looking to live their life at its fullest.
In the news, we hear about such negativity. It looks like to me, especially after October 7th, initially it appeared that there was going to be a lot of support for Israel, but it shifted quickly against Israel. Yeah. And we've seen that continue to steamroll. I mean, in September now you have France, you have Canada, you have Australia, potentially the UK saying we are going to, recognize the Palestinian state. So there's a lot of negativity. Now Netanyahu on the 10th came out and said that, we are going to take over and occupy Gaza City, the 25% remaining on the Gaza Strip that needs to be, controlled by Israel so we can root out Hamas once and for all. A lot of negativity, a lot of outrage concerning that. And I'm wondering, for us as evangelical Christians, how do we help give Christians and non-Christians alike a proper perspective, especially that younger generation, the college-age students that come to, Calvary Chapel Bible College in Jerusalem? How do we help them have a proper understanding of what's going on concerning Israel and her people?
Well, that's a really important question.
It's a big question. But
it's a big question, yeah. And I think that it's a question that I think is still unfolding. And I would hate to pontificate and then later think, oh man, I wish I can take that back. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try to, in my best, what I think needs to happen. I think this generation that's coming up is, there's some good things and there's some bad things. And I say that because a lot of, us older guys were like, oh, you young folk, you don't know anything. My generation was the best. No, we were always messed up, right? And so every generation needs Jesus. There's a part about this generation that I think they're hungry for authenticity, for something that is real. And in my conversations with them, they're in a lot of ways upset at the church because of maybe their dogmatism in certain areas, maybe their involvement with politics. And I don't think that it's so much we shouldn't be involved with politics, but it's like, hey, the right side of politics is always going to be right, and the left side is always going to be wrong. And there's this division where I think the young people are thinking, well, who do we trust? Because obviously there's a bias here. I want to kind of come out of that. Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of bias within kind of a common theme within their peers. More that mob mentality. Once one young person believes it, they all do. And a lot of it is coming from the colleges. So maybe that's being passed down from the professors, kind of seeping into their worldview. But how can we get these young people to understand something different, to understand that, Israel is not the evil of the world. And as believers, we believe that, the world in itself is fallen, right? So there's an aspect where Israel is fallen, America's fallen, Russia is fallen. We're all sinners, that we need the gospel. So I think that we need to back up and we need to teach them what is important in how we view Israel. Is it a political stance or is it a spiritual stance? And I would lean more towards the spiritual. And I say that because I was listening, my wife and I, we live in an all Messianic community here in Israel. And there was a guy who said something once. When we first moved here, he looked me in the face and he said, if you want to love my people, love them with Jesus. And so there's a sense where I think that if we pull away from, the political aspect and just get them to love them in the spiritual sense, that God has brought he has brought them here through a promise. He's not done with them. And the fact that he's going to fulfill this promise, I can be comforted in the promises that he's given from me, which is, that he who began a good work is faithful to complete it. So we're not looking at the good guys versus the bad guys sort of scenario. We're looking at, we're all the bad guys, but look at the love that God has for this people. He's not done with them. So I can enter into that promise too. I think that we need to have a realistic view of Israel, an authentic love. And I say that because I think there's a difference between infatuation and love. Okay. Now let me give you a quick example. And I know we don't have a ton of time, but it's like if a young person was infatuated with a superstar, some person living in Hollywood, and that person has seen all of their movies and watched all of, read through all of his interviews, maybe took the tour to the house several times. They know everything about that person. And it's more of an infatuation. Well, the person that superstar is married to, hopefully it's love. They know that person in an intimate way. They wake up, they smell the bad breath, they see the loss of temper, and yet they choose to love them anyway. And so when I say let's have a love for Israel, I think that we need to teach them what Israel is, who the Jewish people are, for the good or for the bad. What we do is we bring young people to Israel to teach them to love people face to face, not on the internet, watching reels, getting upset about, so-called genocide and that sort of thing. Get them to Israel, let them meet the people, let them sit down and, have a cup of coffee with Yochanan or, something, get to know people. So I think that there is definitely a need for people to come and see it for themselves and to love with an authentic love and not with infatuation. Some people come and they're, within a couple of weeks, they're wearing the kippah and they have a menorah in their house. And, you can do that. We all have the freedom. But the kind of love to say, hey, I see you in all of your good things and all of your bad things, and I love you because that's the way God sees you. And have that sort of love, for Israel. We love the Jewish people. We love being here, and we see the good and the bad. And I think that it's a choice. And it's a prayer that God would give us his spirit, that we would love people the way that he loves them.
It's a great word, especially that idea of love them with Jesus. Such an important part. And I think that's a principle for anyone you come in contact with, though. I mean, just that loving them with Jesus and helping them to see their need for Jesus Christ. We can't expect them to act like believers because they're not.
That's right. Yeah.
So we can't hold them to that standard, but we can help them take another step towards Jesus.
That's right.
By loving them with Jesus.
Amen.
So how do you see, as we're beginning to wrap things up here, how do you see on the landscape of Bible prophecy, since October 7th in particular, the unfolding, or maybe even the stage being set for the fulfillment of Bible prophecy? And what do you tell your students?
Yeah, well, I try to be realistic as possible. I can go on YouTube right now and find every end times guy, and they it's always the same thing. The red heifers and Gog and Magog, and I have to be honest, for a while, Matthew, I just kind of threw the whole thing out. I was like, Lord, you're going to come when you come. I'm just going to be busy about your work. But I would read through, Gog and Magog, and I would think, and people say, oh, it's going to happen any day. And I would think, like, is it though? I mean, it seems like Israel here is left alone. I mean, they are by themselves. Nobody's come to help them in this scenario. And right now, we have allies. America, and very thankful for America's involvement, and of course, allies in Europe. So what do I see right now? I think because the anti-Semitism and the accusations are so outlandish and sometimes even irrational, I have to think that something is going on in the spiritual realm. Whether you want to say that it's demonic or you want to say that God is doing something in the midst. And I think that both are going on. In the end, I have to believe that God is doing something. At some point, we know that Israel is going to be by themselves because God needs to show that he's God to these people. Not that America is going to come and save them. Not even their own army it can save them, but God himself. So I see an isolation that is happening rapidly. So could that be leading into the Magog scenario? Absolutely. Chapters 36 and 37, God's bringing them back into the land. 38 and 39, War of Gog and Magog, and then what happens? The new temple, and it goes right into the millennia. So I think we're close to that, and that would be my opinion. But it's hard to not want to try to put the pieces together. And in some way, I don't think that we have to figure everything out. I think we just need to be watchful and be ready. Purify our own hearts, be ready and excited and hopeful of Christ's coming. I think about that scripture in Acts chapter 1, where they were like, are you going to restore Israel this time? And Jesus said, hey, it's not up for you to know times and seasons, but go and wait, right? Wait till the city until you're, endued with power, and you will be my witnesses unto all the world. And so I think that that's still going on. I believe that the Lord is wrapping things up, but until that time, I think that that's really my mindset.
So for you and your perspective, how can we as Christians be in prayer for Israel right now? What ways do you think we should be in prayer for Israel? And I would even add maybe even Israel's enemies. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Man, that's so hard. Before we wrap things up, I have to say, I watched the video of October 7th. We were invited to go to this exclusive screening of it. And initially I was like, I don't want to see that. That's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. But I really felt like the Lord was prompting both my wife and I to sit down and watch it for the sake of Romans 12, where it says to weep with those who weep, to understand their pain. And having my own kids and, going into the IDF, I need to understand this fully. And so we did. And I walked away with two things. And at that time, my daughter was just going into basic training. And I just got so angry in that, and just thinking like what I would do to a man who would touch my daughter in that way. I could take somebody's life because of a father's instinct. And then the other thought that I had was the sheer impossibility of loving an enemy like this without the help of the Holy Spirit. But that's what we're called to do. We're called to love even our enemy, which is seemingly impossible. And so I really feel like we need a dose of the Holy Spirit here. If as a believing community, and we have Anglicans, Baptists, we have Messianics, we have Christians from the West, but I think that we need the Holy Spirit. And I know that's kind of banging on the same drum, but it truly is not by might nor by strength, but by His Spirit. And that's how He's going to continue to build His temple. Not a temple built with hands, but a temple that is part of the heavenly temple that God is creating. I pray for three things. One, I pray for longevity of life, that the Lord wouldn't allow life to be taken away, because a man can't receive Christ if he's in the grave. And then two, I would say that openness within the gospel, that they would have an open heart, eyes to see, heart to understand, and that sort of thing. And I pray one of the most dangerous prayers that even it's hard to say. I pray, Lord, whatever it takes, that these people would come to faith. Because what if somebody lived an entire lifetime, in comfortability, and yet in the end, their soul perished? So my prayer is simply, Lord, I don't understand. I want to see peace. I want to see life continue on. I don't want to see death, but Lord, may your will be done. Whatever it takes, that these people would receive Yeshua as their Messiah.
Amen. Amen. How can people learn more about Calvary Chapel Bible College in Jerusalem?
Yeah. Well, we do have a website. My wife has put it together. It's pretty decent right now. Just look up, Calvary Chapel Bible College, Jerusalem. We have our ministry, even though it is CCBC Jerusalem, our official ministry is called Jerusalem Light. And so if you go to that webpage in CCBC Jerusalem, you can find a link to bring you to Jerusalem Light, which talks about, everything that we're doing within, our ministry here. So on the CCBC website, it talks about what school would look like, what enrolling would look like, the cost, traveling around and that sort of thing, and just a little bit about us.
Well, Pastor Matthew, it's been such a blessing today to talk with you. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm looking forward to hopefully visiting again. I think it'd be really good for those who partner with Blessors of Israel to hear more about what it is that you're doing, receive your perspective, and also as things continue to progress with Israel concerning Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah, having that firsthand perspective since you're living there, I think would be very beneficial.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to wrap things up, and I just want to thank those who have watched today. Hope you found this time together with Pastor Matthew edifying to your own faith, informative as well. I want to encourage you, especially for those who are visiting for the very first time, to visit our website at www.blessors.org. That's blessors with an ors.org. There you will learn about Blessors of Israel's vision and mission. Also, I want to encourage you to take a look at our newsroom. There you will see original articles with the biblical perspective, along with curated news concerning Israel and the Middle East. If you haven't done so already, I want to encourage you to like this podcast and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Share it with your family, your friends, the people you go to church with, so that others may understand the importance of standing with Israel from a biblical perspective in the latter days. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, X, and Getter. And we covet your prayers and your financial partnership as we build this new and important ministry. Remember, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Shalom, shalom.